Welcome back, everyone. Okay, so we're in week 6, and this week we're discussing the 6th chakra and the 12th house, which you've probably already seen if you've looked at the material so far. Now we're going to talk about how to reduce expenses. So I want to take you really quick over to the financial freedom page for week 6, where we're going to explore reducing expenses. And as I'm saying here, in order to achieve financial freedom, one of the fundamental elements is to have an income that is equal to or greater than your expenses. In the course of this program, while looking at the energy vortexes of the chakras and the 12 zodiacal houses, we also want to look at the ways we might be able to reduce our expenses and or increase our streams of income. And this is where reducing expenses comes in. So we're going to talk about that, and then I'm going to have you do an exercise to come up with a list of monthly expenses, some of which you might be able to eliminate in the next 2 months or in the coming year. All right, so that's where we're at now. We're looking at reducing expenses, and so let's talk about that. All right. One of the things I want to say here is that my goal in this program is to be as honest as I can possibly be, because I think that, if you read books or look at audio or video or workshops by people like Tony Robbins, Wayne Dyer, those are the two that really come to mind for me, but I'm sure you guys have seen others. And you're familiar with probably with the genre, motivational speakers, such like that. Some who may be focused specifically on finances, like Robert Kiyosaki, or people like that. And this idea that you're having someone who's talking to you who's like reached the pinnacle of success, and somehow we're supposed to think that because they've achieved the pinnacle of success that they have the qualifications to tell us how to achieve success. Now, there's some logic behind that, absolutely, but there's also this problem which you may have experienced yourself, either consciously or unconsciously. I can tell you I've experienced it consciously, where I think to myself, okay, you're a millionaire, a multimillionaire, a New York Times bestselling author, or like think about Tony Robbins. He says he charges his clients $1 million a year to coach them. And he's probably a billionaire. I'm not sure, but these people are extraordinarily successful. They're multimillionaires, billionaires, New York Times bestselling authors. And I think, well, of course it's easy for you. You're a multimillionaire, you're a billionaire, you're a New York Times bestselling author, you're extraordinarily successful. Of course it's easy for you. I'm an average human being. I'm just struggling to figure out how to make my life work so I can be happy, so I can thrive instead of just survive. Well, can I have some like normal average person talking to me who can show me how to do this? And there are people out there who are just normal average people, but they are successful. And so, but because there's this cultural belief that you have to be a multimillionaire and a New York Times bestselling author to be, successful, the only people like that can tell us how to be successful, I think actually is harmful, because it gives the impression that if you're not that, you're somehow not successful. And it creates this idea of, it's like it almost creates a class system, not just around money and power and success, but it gives you this idea like you're not as good as them. You'll never be as good as them. You'll never be able to achieve what they achieve. I'm not saying we all feel that way. I do think that they've offered, I've read their works, I've listened to their audio programs, I've seen their workshops, I do think that they have a lot to offer, but, and I've learned a lot from them. But I also know that I have felt that before. Like, how can I'm never going to be of course it's easy for you. You're a multimillionaire. You're a New York Times bestselling author. I'm just an average person. How can I do this? And so again, it creates this kind of class system where you you don't even think you're in that class. How can you do what they do? You're not even in their class. So you kind of you end up looking down on yourself without necessarily realizing that that's what's happening, that you're putting them on a pedestal and you're looking down on yourself, and even if it's only in your subconscious mind, you think, I can never do what they do. They're different than me somehow. And that's why I think it's actually important to not continually perpetrate and perpetuate this idea that you're only successful if you're a multimillionaire, that you can only be financially free if you're a multimillionaire and a New York Times bestselling author, because it's just not true. And so that's why I wanted to bring this program and to be brutally honest, like, I am not going to pretend like I am some kind of perfect person. I'm not. I am just an average human being. I'm not a multimillionaire. I'm not debt free. And yet I do consider myself financially free because I am happy, because I enjoy my life, because I get to do what I want. I get to be my own boss. I get to make the decisions. I get to have the choice. I have the freedom. I get to decide when I work. I get to decide who I work with. I get to decide what I do, And so when I wake up in the morning, I feel motivated because I get to work with people I chose to work with. I get to do work that I am choosing to do, And if I don't want to get on and make a video, I don't have to. I understand that there's a business here, and it does require some discipline. Like, I know that when I make a video, that video goes online and it gets monetized and people watch it, and that's part of how I make my income. So if I don't make videos, I may not make any money. If I don't make videos that people want to watch, I may not make any money. So it's not like I can wave a magic wand and the money just shows up. There is a definite cause and effect relationship. And yet there's still a sense of choice and empowerment, of freedom. I get to do what I love. I'm passionate about astrology. I get to share my passion with the world. That's a gift. I consider myself incredibly lucky. I consider myself financially free because I get to do what I want. I have freedom. I have choice. So, so I know it is possible because I've done it myself, even though I'm not perfect and I'm not a multimillionaire and I'm not a New York Times best-selling author. And yet I consider myself financially free. So I know it's possible. And I got here on my own. I did have help along the way in the sense of, friends who helped me, like magic synchronistic things that landed in my lap. And that's one of the things you'll discover. There's this saying, when you fully commit, providence moves too. There is magic and boldness when you take a risk. I don't know if that's exactly how it goes, but it's something like that. When you commit, providence moves too. There's boldness and genius in action. It's something like that, but it's so true. When you fully commit, providence moves too. I've seen it. It absolutely is true. And so you will get help along the way. But I'm not talking about like, I'm not a, what do they call that? Inheritance baby, not at all. So I've worked for it. I worked hard for it. I made sacrifices, and I've never regretted any of my decisions because I'm so happy now. And I do consider myself financially free, and I do what I love. I have freedom and I have choice, and I am excited about the work that I do every day. So the issue is this: if you're not happy, if you don't feel like you have choice, then are you going to spend the rest of your life on that path, or are you going to make a choice to change? And if you make a choice to change, there will be challenges, there will be sacrifices, but there will also be benefits. And so it's just a matter of which is more important to you. To stay in your comfort zone and do the same thing you've always done. If you continue to do the same thing you've always done, you'll get the same thing you've always gotten. And for some people, that's all they want. I'm guessing you want something more. But the question is, are you willing to do what it takes? Because anyone can have financial freedom, but it takes work. There's no magic wand. There's no get-rich-quick scheme. So, I do think that understanding the chakras is very important because of the way the energy needs to move through our system. And if the chakras are blocked by woundedness, trauma, or fear, that needs to be healed so that the energy can flow through without being blocked. That's very important. That's why understanding the chakras is so important, because you need to know where the blockages are so you can heal those wounds and traumas and clear out those blockages so the energy can flow through and come out into physical manifestation. So that's part of it. Also, I do think that astrology has helped me tremendously because I understand where the energy is showing up in my life, and I use that. I pay attention to it. When it's showing up in a specific area at a specific time, I use that energy to my advantage. And when things aren't working out, I learn from it so that I can change my behavior to be more effective in the future. So that's how astrology helps me, is by understanding where the energy is showing up in my life, how it can help me and benefit me so I can use that energy in an effective way on the days when it is flowing the way, that I can create effectively. Like I said in my video about learning from Mercury retrograde, I was in a hurry and I didn't pay attention to the fact that Mercury retrograde was squaring my natal Mercury. Mercury retrograde in my 9th house of broadcasting and internet was squaring my natal Mercury in my 6th house of work. And Mercury rules communication. It was retrograde and it was squaring my natal Mercury. So I wasn't paying attention to that. I was just rushing, and I learned a lesson, but it's okay. I don't consider that a failure. I don't consider that self-sabotage. I don't feel rejected by anyone. I don't feel a victim of anyone or anything. It's just, it happened. So you learn from it, and then you adjust your behavior. And so that's what I've been doing, just rolling with the punches, and okay, this is working, this isn't working. Let's do more of what's working and less of what's not working, and keep moving forward. So there's always crisis in every opportunity. And that's why when we pay attention to what astrology is teaching us, we can see the patterns and we can benefit from that. So that's why we're learning about chakras and astrology. And then finally, to use practical strategies for increasing income through multiple income streams and reducing expenses. Because as I've said before, there's this thing called the crossover point. So if you have multiple income streams, then eventually your income goes up, up, up. And as you reduce expenses, your expense line goes down, down, down. And then there's a crossover point, and that's financial freedom. Now, it doesn't mean that I think there's 2 levels to it. There's the more spiritual, emotional, psychological side, which is a feeling of freedom. So you can still be in debt. You can still be working and still experience financial freedom. That's where I'm at. but we also want to get to a position where we have the flexibility to move and flow with the bumpiness of life. Okay, so as an example, there's always going to be ups and downs in the stock market. It's cyclical. There's always going to be ups and downs in the economy. It's cyclical. And so you want to have buffers, you know, so that you are never, in a sense, devastated by any of these ups and downs. If you have a buffer, you can, you know, float over those, you know, the bumps going up and down like waves, and you can kind of float on top of that because you have a buffer. So that's the goal. That also is a strategy for financial freedom. So in a sense, this is a perfect opportunity because we are experiencing the cyclical nature of the stock market and the economy. And I don't know if any of you have been personally impacted by it, but if you have, I really want you to share that with me in email so that I know exactly what we're working with here, okay? Because I've been through it all, believe me. I left my high-paying, prestigious, cushy job at a law firm as a patent paralegal, intellectual property paralegal, with a top nationwide law firm. And I did it after 9/11. So, you know, I know what I'm talking about. I quit that job voluntarily after 9/11 because I was so unhappy. And I thought, you know, I went to work that day on 9/11. I dropped my daughter off at daycare and I went to work. I didn't ever listen to the radio, so I had no idea what was happening in the world on that day. It was just a normal day for me. I dropped my daughter off at daycare and I went to work. And it was when I got to work and I did my normal things like getting a cup of coffee, checking my email, checking my voicemail. And my mom was left multiple frantic voicemails. And she's like, check the news, check the news. So I was like, whoa, what's going on here? And I saw all of the other employees huddled around the reception desk. And I'm like, what's going on? So I just kind of wandered up there and I saw them looking at the TV. Someone had brought in a little black and white TV. They were looking at it. And I looked. And that's when I saw, you know, the airplanes. And so what really came alive for me on that day was I realized that the people who died on 9/11 were just like me. They went to work just like me. They went to their desk, they got a cup of coffee, they checked their email, they checked their phone messages just like me. And then they died. And even to this day, you know, I guess it's almost 20 years later. It still breaks my heart. And I had to change my life because it was a wake-up call for me. It made me realize we can die at any moment. We could die on any given day. And if you aren't living your life, then you're dying your life. And I asked myself, knowing I'm just like those people who lost their lives on 9/11. I'm just like them. I'm living out my mourning the same way in Colorado, in Denver, Colorado, the same way they were living out their lives in New York City. We were exactly the same kind of people. And I thought to myself, if I was them and I only had a few seconds left to live, and I had those seconds to ask myself, is Is it worth it? And I'm thinking my little baby girl is in the daycare, you know, just maybe a quarter mile away from where I was working. And here I am with only seconds left to live. Is it worth it? I said, no, it's not worth it. I don't want to be here. This is not the way I want to live my life. And if I died today, knowing my baby girl is only a quarter of a mile away from me and I'm not with her and she's not with me, it's not worth it. So, so that was a huge wake-up call, because I knew I'd been holding my breath for a long time. I knew I was miserable there. I knew I wanted out. I just didn't know how because I was so damn scared. But when I realized that I could die at any moment, I could die on any given day, and that was real on that day. That was not just a theory. It was real on that day. And I had got a huge wake-up call. You can't live your life in fear, because if you're not living your life, you're dying your life. So that's when I decided to change my life. And took a long time. I groped in the dark most of that way and tried to find my way to financial freedom, to find my way to happiness, to find my way to thriving. And I've never regretted the journey. So I want to share with you a book that I think is really helpful for the strategy of financial freedom. It's called Your Money or Your Life. And the original version was by Joe Dominguez and Vicki Robin, but Joe Dominguez has since died and Vicki Robin has done the revision. And both books are really good. The original book is really good and the revision is really good. And I own it both. I own the original version in paperback. I own the new revised version in paperback. And I own the new revised version on Audible. That's how good I think it is. And it's really not that expensive. This paperback is $18. It's well worth the money, believe me. Or if you get it on Audible. If you don't have an Audible account, you can get your first book free. So I'm not kidding you. If you don't have an Audible account, you can get this book free on Audible because they let you have your first book free and you can cancel your account. So you could get this book on Audible for free. So if you don't have an Audible account, I highly recommend it to get that book for free. And then the other thing is, if you decide you like Audible, it's like, I'm not doing an advertisement. I'm just telling you personally, I love Audible. I think the monthly membership fee is only like $17, $16.99, something like that. And then you get a book every month. And but again, the first one is free and you can cancel. So, and you get to keep your free book. So it's well worth it. And if you decide to stay with Audible, I also think it's well worth it. I love my Audible account. So anyway, there are different ways to do budgets. And I got this little budget book. This was like on sale at Michael's for $1.97, nothing. So I haven't actually used this one, but I might play with it because I want to go fine tune my my finances and a little more and look for ways to tighten my budget. But the interesting thing about this philosophy in Your Money or Your Life is that it's not about sacrificing in the sense of like just constantly reduce without any consideration for what you're doing or why you're doing it. They're focused on looking for joy in life. And so when you spend money, you have to know why you're spending that money. In other words, are you spending it because you're bored or because you're spending it unconsciously or because you're unhappy or you're feeling uncomfortable and you're just trying to escape that discomfort or that boredom or that unhappiness, or just spending unconsciously, that's what they're trying to get you to look at. And I think that that's like a really good way of looking at it, because whenever I spend money, I'm more conscious of why I'm spending money. Like, is this thing that I'm spending money on really valuable to me? Because it works both ways. You can spend money unconsciously because you're bored, uncomfortable, unhappy, but also sometimes we avoid spending money out of fear. And that's not necessarily a good thing either. Like me going to the San Francisco conference, or I just signed up for the Colorado Springs Writers Conference, which is in mid-April. And so the thing is, like, if I say, well, I should pay off my debt, but then I'm not doing what I'm passionate about, which is I love to write. I want to get an agent. I love connecting with the literary and publishing community. So if I don't go because I'm afraid to spend the money, that's not living either. That's not financial freedom. That's living in fear. So it's not simply about not spending money. It's about being conscious about how you spend the money so you get the most juice out of life. Okay, that's freedom. So I'm going to take you over to a sample budget, because that's one of the exercises. Let me just check over here to the website again. So the exercise in reducing expenses is to come up with a list of monthly expenses, some of which you might be able to eliminate in the next 2 months or in the coming year. So this is kind of different from a budget. If you like to do budgets, that's great. If that works for you. But this is a little bit different. This is more about just like understanding what your expenses are. So this is a sample budget. So I just put up here a sample budget for March 2020, and listing out some of the expenses, and like credit cards. Like, this is the way I like to do it because I put it in chronological order. So first payment is due on March 4th and March 6th, and then in this one March 6th and March 7th and March 7th, and just go down chronologically, listing each one, what it is, if it's a credit card, what the balance is, when the payment is due, what the minimum payment is, so that I know, like, okay, if I can only pay the minimum payment, fine. Or if I can pay more, fine. If I can pay it off, great. And also tracking how much they're charging me in interest and fees. Sometimes I'll just use the actual dollar amount, or sometimes put in the percentage. So if I'm making choices about paying off certain credit cards, then I know which ones might be more beneficial to pay off first if they have higher interest rates. Obviously, that's good to pay off first. So, and then my monthly student loan bill, credit card 2, credit card 3, if they're paid off, then the balance is 0 and the payment due is 0, and I can track the credit available because maybe like I might need that for emergencies or business expenses or things like that. I don't go out and shop for fun. That's not something I do for fun. There are too many other things that I have to live for besides just shopping. So I don't do that for entertainment. And then my phone bill, and just tracking the credit cards. If they're paid off, then I put them in green. And then other bills that need to be paid, like, this I've tracked the interest and the interest rate. And so like this interest rate is higher than this one, so I might want to pay this one off first. So that way I can just track. It gives me an easy way to know which one might be best to pay off first. And so again, I just go through there and put them in chronological order, and then there's my car payment, and the rest are paid off. But at least I know what I have if I need it for an emergency. or is it a business investment if I'm traveling or something like that. Then I know what I have. And, you know, FICO scores are important too because you can get lower interest rates. You know, like you could even possibly get a balance transfer card with a 0 interest rate. And that can help a lot in terms of paying cards off faster. So FICO scores are important. The other thing I like to do is start out the month with everything unbolded. So my car payment is unbolded because I still have to pay that bill this month. And then when it's paid, then I just go in and I put it in bold. And then when everything's in bold, then I know the bills for that month are paid. And so, again, it's basically everything's in chronological order. So I know where I am in the month. As soon as it's paid, I put it in bold. Up until then, it's not in bold, except for the credit cards. If they're paid off, then I keep them green and I keep them in bold. Some of the credit cards have a monthly fee, like these two. So at the beginning of the month, they'd still be green, but they wouldn't be in bold because that reminds me, okay, I still have to pay the monthly fee of $12 on that card and the monthly fee of $8 on that card. Even if there's no balance, they have a monthly fee. Now, at some point, you know, I can weigh it out and say, is it worth it to me to pay $20 every month to keep these cards? Well, if I'm trying to build good credit and I'm working on my FICO score, it might be worthwhile to keep the cards. Or if I think I might need that money in an emergency, you know, or for a business expense, then it might be worthwhile to keep the card. But you know, those are things that each of you individually have to decide. But you've got to track your expenses, because if you don't, you have no idea, you know, what you have no idea. If you're not tracking what's coming in and what's going out, then you have no idea how close you are getting to financial freedom. So the goal here would be ultimately to pay off each of these credit cards. So, you know, if that's the goal, then each month I'm working to pay off maybe this one first. And the student loan will never get paid off, I don't think, in my whole lifetime, but that's fine. It's only $86 a month. I can manage that because it's income based. And, you know, monthly T-Mobile is due every month, and web hosting fees are due every month. That's not, and my Audible, that's not listed here because they're tied to a credit card. They come off a credit card every month. The monthly web hosting fee and monthly Audible subscription. So it's on one of these that I still owe money on. So I just haven't bothered to put it in my budget. But eventually, like if I pay this off, then if that's the card that, you know, that it's being charged to, then I'll have to take it out and put it in as an expense that will come out of my regular bank account. So, okay, so what else? So then the other thing you can do is look at how much you make every month. You know, for me, it's a little bit hard because my income is not stable enough. It goes way up and way down. And when it goes way up, I pay off credit cards. When it goes way down, there have actually been times where I've literally have to live off of credit. So so I'm looking forward to, that's one of my goals, is to stabilize my income so that every month I have a certain amount that's a minimum that I can count on every single month. Obviously, I do make enough of a minimum income to pay my minimum expenses every month, except for there have been times when my income was so low that I literally had to use credit cards to live on. And that's one of the challenges of being self-employed until you reach that point where you make enough money that you've always got a minimum income and the rest is just sort of like cream on top. That's what I'm still working toward and toward paying off debt. So, but again, the goal is to continue building your income, especially through multiple income streams, so that you're not completely dependent on one source of income. And that way, you can ride out the bumps and also have extra income to rely on, and then maybe have the freedom, if you ever decide you do want to change your life or leave a job or whatever, you have the freedom to do that. You have the choice to do that, and that's part of financial freedom. So creating those multiple income streams is a strategy that leads toward freedom and reducing expenses, so that you eventually reach that crossover point where your income has gone up enough and your expenses have gone down enough that you've reached that crossover point. So for me, as an example, that would mean if I'm making a minimum amount every month and it never goes below that, like if I go a whole year and every month I made that minimum without ever having to dip into credit, then that would be the number that I would put on that graph going up. And then expenses going down. So like, for example, as you pay off credit cards, your expenses go down because you don't have that monthly payment anymore. And so with the income going up and the expenses going down, eventually you reach that crossover point. And that's part of financial freedom. So I think really there are two aspects to financial freedom. One is just feeling free. If you love your life and you feel like you have choice and you're doing what you want to do, then you're free. And then the second is this practical strategy of increasing income and reducing expenses so that you reach that crossover point, so that you never have to, you don't have to be afraid, like if you lose a source of income, as an example. And so I too am still working on diversification, working on diversifying my multiple income streams. I'm always thinking about that. And while at the same time, not just running toward a source of income out of fear, but really making conscious choices. Like, is this really what I want to do with my life? Because there have been things that I've tried that were not meeting needs. I tried Lyft for a little while when I was working on my master's degree, and it worked at first. I could make like $25 and $30 an hour, which was nice because being in my car, I could listen to audiobooks because my program was in creative writing and had to read a lot of books. So I could listen to audiobooks while I was in my car. Then if I got, a customer, I could pick them up and turn off the audiobook, take them where they needed to go. Again, I was making about $25 to $30 an hour listening to the audiobooks the whole time. So that was really convenient for me. But then the city I was in, Denver, got like saturated with Lyft drivers. And then it was like, I couldn't hardly make $9 an hour. And that didn't even take into account like my gas and other expenses that were, like you'd have to take that out to get a true balance. And it was $9 an hour without even taking out those expenses. So that means it was lower than $9 an hour. And I just said, this isn't worth it anymore. So, again, I'm not going to, like, in my mind, it never made sense to me to accept something that's just not going to meet needs. It's like, no, this is not good enough. I deserve more than $9 an hour. I'm not going to accept this. I'm going to go find some other way to make money. And I've had a few $9 an hour jobs that I've quit. I tried it. Nope, that doesn't work for me. Sorry, I'm not going to take it. I'll go find something else. So, because I don't make my decisions out of fear. I make them out of practical, rational, logical strategy. And if something doesn't work for me, I'm not going to stay there out of fear. I'm going to go find another solution. So, that's just more thoughts on multiple income streams and creating multiple income streams. And then we'll continue to talk more about reducing expenses as well. So I just wanted to give you this basic overview of, starting to track your expenses so that you can see how you're reducing them. And then we can talk more about how to reduce expenses. I've used some very creative solutions. Like, you may have noticed there was no housing expense on there, no utilities on there. I've been nomadic for, since I think late 2016, probably even longer than that. I've been nomadic for a long time, actually. And that's one of the ways that I made ends meet, and so that I could build this business. And I don't have any fear around that either. I'm very comfortable being nomadic. And if you're comfortable being nomadic, you can find really creative ways to reduce your housing expense. So that can help a lot too. So I do have groceries and car expenses that I also didn't put on there, mainly just because I use one of my credit cards always, pay for gas or car maintenance or groceries and stuff like that. And I need to, as I pay off debt, I need to pull those expenses out and put them on my budget so that I know that those are coming out of my regular bank account. So I do want to talk more about how to reduce expenses. I think there's two sides to it. One is the psychological, emotional side to it, and the other is just very practical strategies and solutions, very creative, practical strategies and solutions for reducing expenses, for being frugal, and enjoying it too, not feeling deprived at all. All right, so that's where we're at. We're halfway through the program, and I may upload more material for the week, so check back and see if I have. And otherwise, when you get through week 6, you are halfway through the program. So I would love it if you would, stay in touch with me through email. Let me know if you're being impacted by the current situation going on in our country. A lot of people are being impacted, and if you're one of them, I would like to know, and I'd like to know exactly how you're being impacted. Is it impacting you emotionally? Is it impacting you relationally? Is it impacting you physically? Is it impacting you financially? Whatever it is, let me know so we can work with that. And if you have any questions about archetypes or the chakras or astrology or multiple income streams or reducing expenses or anything, please, please, please feel free to email me, share that information with me, ask questions, and share how things are going in your life right now. All right, so that's it for week 6, and I will look forward to hearing from you. Bye-bye. Hello. For some reason, it didn't stop recording. All right, let's try that again. Bye-bye.